work session to order, and I would like to thank everybody for coming today, excuse me, used to meeting at night. And just thank everybody for their work that they put into getting us to this point, all the staff, Dr. Thomas, and the board members. We have a task ahead of us today that I'm not sure anybody knows the surefire answer to, and, but we'll give it our best shot. Ms. Wilson, do we have confirmation of notice in the media?
Yes, sir. I did email that to everyone with the links.
Okay, we have a form here for attendance. I have a request for approval of the agenda.
So moved to approve the agenda.
Kathleen, motion, I have a second. Second, Mr. Carter. Discussion. All in favor, show of hands. Ayes have it. Do I have a request to move into executive session?
So
Do we have a second? No second. We'll move right along. We'll move straight into the discussion of the 2021 school year, learning market options, and Dr. Thomas.
Let me ask a question before we start. Okay. I feel like we're getting off on the wrong step already. Okay. The work session. Okay. A work session doesn't require an executive session. You know, I've been the big proponent of not having a work session because we don't get anything done. And this right here is what I'm saying we don't do. You know, we looking for a time where everybody can express themselves. It seems like every time this thing come up, we forget about it. You know, we don't hold board member hostage to not say what they do. You know, and I don't know where we get this thing, and it's not a front to Dr. Thomas, but a board workshop doesn't even require that the superintendent be present because it's something the board is going to look at. You know, personally, I don't even think that we should go on with this. I think we should scrap this and just go to a workshop because this format is totally wrong.
To the best of my knowledge, and I have checked with many people, and I think everybody was sent an email yesterday that Lisa had sent out not quite a year ago, but 10 months ago, pertaining to the rules that pertain to work sessions. And this agenda follows.
But it had nothing in there about executive session.
Correct, but that doesn't mean that it's not allowed.
But there's nothing that we're discussing here in a work session that pertains to an executive session.
And
We were only wanting to have a workshop to discuss the expectations of the board and the superintendent to start off a new administration with the board and the superintendent, and to come to some agreement of what the board expected from the superintendent, what the superintendent expected from the board, and to move forward in those terms of how we were going to move forward in a new administration. What's listed here under an executive session, there's no reason to go into an executive session to have that discussion.
And that's certainly the option of the board just exercising.
But you skipped the whole process. You went on then to go into the reopening of schools. You just skipped that whole process that we were not even going to be able to have the option to discuss with the superintendent what our expectations are and what she has for us.
Well, since it is a personnel matter,
It's not a personnel matter.
well, that,
She's already been elected as the superintendent. All we're doing is just talking about the path forward, and we're just throwing out ideas of how we see the district running under her. We're not talking about personnel issues.
and we'll still be able to do that under
You
this
skipped it.
exact thing under the school year model.
No, that's a whole separate topic that needs to be addressed separately, because the school, reopening the schools is a whole separate topic that deserves its own special time, because the community and the teachers and the staff and the students are all concerned about where we're going as a school district and a community and the direction that we're taking. And that deserves a whole separate time frame that we are gonna dedicate towards that. That shouldn't be part of a working relationship that the board and the superintendent are gonna have.
Duly noted, and we will arrange that to work tonight.
I'd just like to say, it is not common for us to have an executive session and a work session as well. I too have talked with some legal people, and it's not common, but it's not illegal.
Right.
And my concern was having two, one in a work session as well as one in our call board meeting. And to have them both at the same time, because to me, it gives me a chance to digest what we discussed and to come back to it.
Yeah.
Duly noted here, but I just didn't see, it's like two. Normally they're held in your call board meetings or your regular board meetings as it regards executive session, not in the work session. When we've done it, I have to revert to the past. I gave you some clues, you said it's because of me, but I said, let's get someone from Columbia just to introduce, go forward, and we can do our own, granted, but it's a good way to go into it, because, you know, they can, it's nothing formal, they come with introductions, board superintendent relationships, expectations, superintendent, you know, the evaluation, all those topics have been discussed before. And basically the general format that we follow as well. And everything that comes up, everything that comes up. So in saying that, that's my reason for not wanting to.
Well, I respect
That's
that.
basically the reason for not wanting to.
Mr.
Um,
Mayor,
Bobby, it is definitely not a one person. All of us are board members. We are a team. We work collectively, not just one, all of us. So please bear that in mind. And that's why I like Ms. Wilson, that she can always send out the information to everybody. You don't have to call one person here and there. Get it to Ms. Wilson, let her disseminate it accordingly. And everybody will be on the same sheet, have the same information at the same time. It makes a world of difference, and things will really run smoothly. They really do.
Mr. Chairman, if I may speak, at the direction of Dr. Thomas, I have contacted the South Carolina School Board Association to do a workshop, a board superintendent workshop, but because of the pandemic and everything, it's gonna be August before they're able to come and do that. But we have as well, we got that working, but we just can't get the time pinned down yet, okay?
And I respect that both of y'all said, and it's well taken, the note well taken. And we will proceed forward now on with that format. As y'all know, as being chairman, one of my responsibilities is the agenda.
Along with the superintendent.
Correct.
Okay,
That's
I'll make sure.
That's right. And what I did here was came up with a plan that after talking, hearing what several of you had to say about different things, and realizing the fact that we now, board meetings just like the, work sessions are streamed live, just like our board meeting.
Yeah, open to the public, yes,
And,
because we don't have public in here, that's fine,
yeah, I mean, that's what we,
absolutely.
and the fact that some people are gonna be out of town later in the month. And one thing that, we haven't gotten into yet, but will come out as the meeting goes on. We have to have a plan voted on and in place no later than July 28th. So, once I found, as we just exercised the right that we do, the majority does rule on this board, like you said, Susan. We exercise the right not to go into executive session. And we won't. But, our main purpose here, I was trying to satisfy 3 or 4 people and condense this down to a process where we could possibly do it in one day without having multiple meetings over the next couple of weeks, which would be required. The only thing that is really different than the process you're talking about, Susan, is we would have the option. We don't have to. There's no law that says we have to vote on anything. But we do have the option to vote if we so desire. That's the only difference between what you're talking about, Susan, versus what we have here, is the option to vote. If we had called it just strictly a workshop and nothing else, we would not even have had an option. It would have obligated us to a minimum of 1 more meeting over the next 2 weeks.
Well, probably we had all agreed to a workshop, and we all were aware of that. And that's why we wanted a workshop, so we could sit, open communication, open discussion, ask questions, spend as much time as we need. Hear what Dr. Thomas has to share about the task force and the surveys. I understand we need to make sure our working relationship is what it's supposed to be. I understand your point there. But our community is dying to know what's going on as far as back to school. And everything else, I think, is secondary to that right now. Even a financial report and a calendar change, everything is secondary to what's going on as far as back to school goes. And I think that's why we had all agreed to a work session to start with.
And that's exactly what we have from this point on, was a brief, unprivate conversation about the Greenfield schools. The reason Mr. Lawless was on here is not for financial report, but for a general obligation bond that we have had many, many years, long before I came on board, to payment to the league team. And he would just want to get that done and over with, because this year our budget is going to run into the fall. Where normally our budget process is complete by this time, we have no information to even start it. But what you're wanting to accomplish is the floor is open to accomplish that exact thing from this morning. And like I said, I apologize for the confusion, but I only did it for one reason: try to help the board members accomplish the things that I had been told that the concerns they had about the remainder of the month. And I won't do it again. Just that something.
We only need 24 hours to let it's,
I know, but
I just don't think that that's a fair assessment. Because that's coming back,
We've had early morning meetings as well.
that's coming back to me, or to say that, because I said I was gonna be on vacation later in the month. You're gonna be on vacation later in the month.
you told me you didn't want me one on time.
No, I did not.
No,
Probably not good.
that was the way I took it.
Well, don't go there.
Well, that's the way I took it, excuse me.
I mean,
But anyway, like I said, I made a mistake, it's been noted, I won't do it again. I mean, I don't know what else I can do at this time, once it, you know. But now we're to the point to accomplish exactly the restore the schools.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I definitely know that this is definitely a topic that, a hot topic, very hot topic, that everyone's wanting to know, what's the plan, where do we go from here? There's been a lot of work that has occurred, working with the task force and working with the district office team here to create or come up with some options for a reentry plan for 2020, 2021. So hopefully during this time, we'll be able to discuss those different options, look at the different survey options as well, and see if there's some things or models that we have in place that we could definitely set forth in order to be able to have a plan that we can communicate sometime in the near future to the community as far as going forward with our plan for reentry into school. So again, I've been working with the task force, and it's been very beneficial to get different ideas and information from them as well. So we have a variety of people that are serving on the task force, and I really appreciate their commitment and their service for that as well. But we do know that we have some very difficult and challenging decisions ahead. And so through that process, it will require lots of cooperation, lots of partnership, lots of coordination. And so I'd just like to thank all the partners and stakeholders and families and staff and communities for that ahead of time as well. So our focus, of course, we ultimately, ideally, want to be able to get our students in school so that we can educate them and provide the best learning opportunities possible. However, the greatest priority must be given to ensuring the health, safety, and wellness of our students and staff. So that's what we've really taken into consideration as we've gone through this process with the task force and with other members of the district staff as well. How can we educate our students while also how can we do it safely? So we do have the review of the calendar, and the reason that this is a part of this plan is because we are requesting to the board to move the date back 1 week. Students would start on August the 24th. And the reason for this is that the state is requiring 5 additional days called LEAP days, which stands for Learn, Evaluate, Analyze, and Prepare. These are required days for students in K through 8. And so we're looking for that. Those have to begin 5 days prior to the start of school. So we know that people may have other things planned or other things based on the calendar that was published before. So we thought if we could just move the calendar back 1 week, that would not adjust the date that was already published.
can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so your presentation that you're gonna make, are you gonna do this in sections, or can we stop throughout here and kind of digest what you're?
I do have it divided into sections, but definitely feel free at any point if there are questions that may come up throughout the process, please stop me.
Yeah,
We
so
can talk and discuss.
let's talk about this, moving the days here.
Okay.
So was that a recommendation from the state that this came from? Or, I mean, where did this originate from, moving the days?
It was recommended by the state as an option. We could do it the 5 days anytime prior to school. So we could do it 2 weeks prior to school starting as well. But we have to provide those 5 additional days. And so we thought that moving the calendar back 1 week, then that would kind of coincide with the calendar that was already published. And so that would allow the students, we would do those additional 5 days, that original week that we would have been starting school.
Okay, and the 5 days are basically just to see where the kids are and from what we did whenever we went out.
Yes, ma'am. Those 5 days can be used for different, can be utilized for different purposes. It could be for diagnostic evaluations, analysis, revisiting previous content and skills. So it may be to where there's some tutoring and interventions for those students that may need it as well. So data analysis, also just social emotional learning and preparation, kind of for that transition back into the school setting. Also used for IEPs, to review the IEPs and to provide some additional support for those students with IEPs as well. We can also use
Let me
that.
ask this then, if so the kids would be assigned like their schedule or whatever, starting with that on the 24th, right? To begin, okay.
For the
You're
5
saying they're
days.
gonna begin on the 17th, and
Yes,
then the,
Our regular calendar would start on August 24th.
24th, okay, but you're saying the 5 days would start on the 17th,
Yes, ma'am.
okay? So are they gonna be assigned, the kids would go in like what their assignment would be based on if they're coming in on the 24th?
They would come in that way, however, we would not have all of the students. We would still have to follow the guidelines. So we're thinking maybe 1/5 of the students would come in during that time to go through the assessment or to work with the teachers. So we would still follow the guidelines as far as social distancing, the class size, being able to keep them separated.
But we don't have those guidelines yet.
We have guidelines from DHEC and from the State Department that are recommended.
But those are just recommended. I mean, we get to decide what the guidelines are, right?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, we have the guidelines that are recommended by DHEC and the State Department, but we do.
Each district still gets to decide what the guidelines will be for the district. So my question then is that during those 5 days, if the kids are coming in based on like, this is my schedule, and they come in and we start sending them through the evaluation and the diagnostic tools and that kind of stuff to see where they were, because it's pretty clear that there are some students that missed out early on with what happened through the spring and coming through the end of the year. I mean, regardless of what people are saying, students did not get a great education through there. So once we start doing this diagnosis and evaluation, it may change then where they need to be placed starting the 24th.
We would definitely take all of that into consideration and make those determinations. However, we do have data from March and prior that the students had that we're using as far as our initial placements. So that would probably have more of a difference as far as the interventions that we may provide and the different services that we would provide, not necessarily their total placement in those cases.
Okay, I'm just real concerned about the students because I just think they lost a lot. I think they lost a lot in those months. And I'm just concerned about where we're just gonna start them up, you know, coming back in and, you know, just where we're gonna put them and that kind of stuff. I'm just real concerned.
And I understand, we're definitely concerned about trying to have that academic recovery for what was lost. Because ideally, we all know that face-to-face would be the best education for our students. And it was an emergency type situation. And I think our teachers did a great job, considering the circumstances. But we do have a plan in place to really improve in those areas as well. And I have some information about that too.
Okay.
So those again, in professional development, we can also use those days for that as well to provide some professional development. So we do have a little bit of flexibility with how we use that, and we will receive funding for the 5 days. So again, it is established for K-8. However, we are also required to do a pre-assessment for our 9th graders. So we were thinking of possibly doing that during that same week. However, we would not receive funding for that. So the district would have to figure out how we would fund for the teachers to come in to do those things for our 9th graders. If we
So
do it
no
during the
funding
summer.
for the high school to do any of that.
Do you already have a cost on that? Have you already figured that out?
We have looked at it some. If we did their daily rate, which is what we're doing for our K-8, then we're looking at about $15,000. However, if we set a predetermined amount and ask if they would be willing to come in to work for that amount per day, then it would probably be more, maybe about $6,000 or $7,000. So you do have copies of the calendar. And so that is something that during the regular meeting, that would be a request for approval for that. But you can see the different, included in that, we do have state mandated e-learning practice days on the calendar. And those are required by the state, as well as the state leave days as well. And so that's where we would have our small groups of students that we would have to come in, and the parents would be notified of when they would attend. So those are in orange on the calendar. So with that, you can see adjustments have been made as far as with some of the makeup days have been moved to later times.
And we're gonna be asked to approve this in our call board meeting.
It's on the agenda, I mean, you know.
But like I said earlier, it's an option. We have the option to approve it or not vote on it or disapprove it. And that's why it's put on the agenda, just to give us the option to move one if we want to. It's not a mandate.
So that'll be the meeting proceed following this.
Correct. But it is an option, but it's not a mandate.
Mr. Chairman, I'll add something. We have worked with Clinton on this, so we do try to do a joint calendar. So they are going to also take a very similar calendar to their board whenever they have their board meeting, I think next week.
I think it's Monday.
So we have been kind of consulting with them and try to come up with a common calendar for our community to still go forward. The only change that they're going to make to this prior to submitting it to their board, if you notice the 3rd and 4th of June, we have listed as half days. They're going to move the June 3rd half day to April 2nd half day as that Friday before spring break, which is the weekend before Easter. But that's something that if we want to do that, they told us that this weekend, that was the only change they were going to make to it prior to, and you already had this in your packet. But that if we wanted to adhere to their same type of approval, you could also amend that prior to the approval and change those half days to match theirs also. But we don't have to. But we did go through looking at the state mandated e-learning dates. There are 2 days that we have to put in our calendar prior to the 45th day. We chose to swap those out when we were having parent-teacher conferences. So if you look at the old calendar to that calendar, those black days then went to from that parent-teacher weekend. We just didn't think that that was going to still be available to have every parent come in face-to-face that weekend to have conferences. We didn't know what the rules and regs would be for social distancing and having that many visitors in the building. We did take out the November 2nd date, which was the day prior to election day, from a teacher work day to a green student day. We were trying not to push back the last day of school, graduation day, all based on because people have already had this calendar for so long. So we really looked at moving teacher work days, and also the kind of the whole idea of moving our makeup days to the end of the school year. The only addition that we do start earlier for is a teacher work day did come to a 5 full day work week for teacher work day. But that was going to be kind of pretty much whole harmless for teachers to have a true work in your room, no meetings, no anything versus work in your room. Because that is a day that we're adding to the front of the calendar, knowing that some people may still be on vacation, just knowing that that was going to be something that we are adding to the front of the year. That was the only thing that we added at the front for teachers. So we tried to stick within the same kind of parameters that we started with, so we don't mess anybody up as much as possible. And we did change after Christmas break or winter break that we swapped the teacher work day, the day that we immediately come back, to the weekend of the 15th, so that we could swap over the 9 weeks, because with us bumping days back, we felt like we needed to end the 9 weeks after Christmas versus prior to. And that gives the high school some time to swap over all their coursework, because they will actually be swapping classes that weekend. So if there's any schedule changes that need to be made for anybody that did not pass, that they need to reschedule some of those kids, that gives them a couple extra days.
So we're gonna send students back after Christmas to take exams after a 2-week break?
We're hoping that especially the state mandated exams, like end of course, for those semester classes, where the state is requesting a waiver from the feds.
Right.
So that is something that we're hoping that they allow for the feds. So that would be the only change of those, and those that would give you kind of a week to kind of finish teaching, review, and then a week to finalize your exams. But some of those exams could still be given prior to Christmas, and then come back and teach the last few standards that you may have left, remaining, and do a smaller assessment after. So that will be flexible enough for our teachers to do their final right before, and then teach a little bit more.
And at this point, do you think that it's gonna be approved that there's no EOCs?
I know our state legislature has passed it, Molly Spearman has requested it, but I don't know what the feds will do, because this will be basically 2 years of waiving federal accountability. So I don't know what that'll look like, or if they'll require something. It may just be based on those kids that could take it in the spring and not the ones that would have taken it in the fall.
The weekdays and bringing, you have your small groups of students K through 9. If it's determined, and I'm really thinking elementary grades when I say this, if it's determined that at that point that the students are really behind in the fact that they don't really need to be in that next grade group that they've been promoted to, is the new 4th grade teacher going to be expected to teach and catch the 3rd grade student up, or will they go back to 3rd grade?
The teachers will probably work collaboratively, because, each year we unfortunately do have students that may not have mastered all of the content from the year before. So they definitely work, like the 4th grade teacher would definitely work with that 3rd grade teacher. And we have interventions set up and in place to where we can provide some tutoring and some interventions throughout the day, as well as after school as well. So we will try to guide as much interventions as possible and provide as much support for that teacher in order to help fill in the gaps and provide that academic recovery. Because unfortunately, as mentioned before, it is not uncommon that we have students that have some gaps as they.
Sure,
move
I
to-
understand that, but I think this particular case, there may be a few more students and, you know, depending on how those students are broken apart amongst teachers, you know, hey, for a fourth grade teacher to have to focus half of the class time on third grade, you know, on third graders that didn't get what they needed prior to the end of the school year.
What we have done in the past as well, and what we would definitely utilize if necessary, is that there are times where we may have that fourth grade student go and into a third grade classroom, because maybe they're only missing gaps in ELA or in math. So during that time, they would meet with that third grade teacher to get caught up on some of those standards. But it may not necessarily. So we really look at kind of individualized, personalized learning for that child, so that whatever those learning gaps are, we're able to accommodate that during that time. So it may be that they're missing some math standards, and we can definitely do some different work across grade levels for that.
Dr. Thomas, do you have this, grant or,
I can definitely share it.
okay, that would be great. That's pretty small print. Yeah, so there's still a little
Share with me.
I can do
It's changed a little bit.
But then my still would share it.
This is a downloaded version. It's changed, but it's pretty similar. Jim has the, your email.
You don't have to do it now. I'll just listen and then, you know, when you have time, you can share. Okay, sometime. Yeah.
All right. Any additional questions or comments regarding the school calendar?
I don't, if we deviated from fund, would that cause a problem? Would that cause any problems?
There are a few cases where we may have teachers that may teach in Clinton, their children are in Lawrence, but I don't see that there are significant differences, but we do have some things like that. We have a lot of children that are transiting and go back and forth between the districts, but, you know, I don't really see any huge problems if there's a deviation. As a result of some decisions that we may have to make, if we're following the guidelines set forth by DPEC and the State Department with looking at especially our busing, that will require us to adjust our possible school start times. Because in many cases, when we look at the number of students that, to social distance that can be on the bus at one time, we would have to do multiple routes in order to get the students to school. So as a result of that, we would look at possibly adjusting the start times of school. So our elementary would pretty much stay the same. It currently starts at 7:50, so we would leave that and possibly look at our middle school, adjusting that back to 8:15, and then our high school to 8:40.
So what's that cost gonna be for additional bus routes? What's that gonna do to us financially?
I don't have those figures handy, but I can definitely get that. Do you have any? I know that that is going to be covered for the most part. We are providing money, even looking at our CARES funds and other information. We're getting some funding to help with the process of the expense that will.
Would it be like the same driver would run the same route, or would we have additional buses running that route to make it, to be able to get them?
In most cases, it will be the same driver. I know that Mr. Stevens, our Director of Transportation, is currently working on that plan. And so we've worked with him. Dr. Penland has met with him on several occasions. And so he has a plan worked out that is very doable to where we can run the multiple routes, do the required cleaning in between those routes. and still have the students, to school on time. Even, we kind of just adjusted a little bit more just because we're not sure of all the specifics involved. But we've definitely worked with transportation and the guidance that they've received as well. So, in those cases, it can be the same driver.
Do we have that?
It's on, we'll go to slide 31. I think it's the same. Part of the state bus recommendations is that you can have nobody on seat 1. So the front row, there's supposed to be no kids. And so whenever you're looking at the bus, nobody can sit on the front row. The state recommendation is half the capacity of the bus. So we have some capacities that are up to 77. Well, that would still put 35 to 37 kids on a bus at a time. And so whenever you're looking at that, that would put 1 student on 1 seat, 2 on another, and alternating back and forth. Our recommendation we're going to put forth is 1 child per seat, unless they're from the same household. And then we would allow them to sit together. But we're just trying to make sure that we're going with the sanitation recommendations and the seating recommendations set forth by the state. They're also providing electrostatic sprayers that we're to spray down the buses in the morning and in the afternoon after each route. If the bus, and the recommendation is if the bus is actually used for more than 1 route in the morning, then you're to wipe those seats down between each route. So that's one of the things that we're looking at whenever we're looking at the expanse of time. And looking at that also includes somebody going through wiping the bus down before it makes that second loop. The extended amount of time that we foresee on a bus driver may be 30 minutes to an hour, morning and afternoon. So it may just take some of our drivers into more overtime. The cost of the actual transportation and the travel and the gas, that'll all still be covered by the state, as long as it's part of a route. But the amount that we're paying for the driver salary is what we can't get a good grasp on yet based on those routes, because whenever we start looking at how many kids are coming in, what we're looking at that way, that's going to kind of vary based on whatever plans approved also.
The state will also pay for the cleaning part of it as well, because that's going to be an expense, an added expense.
They are providing the sprayers and the chemicals that will be used. They're actually going to give us 1 to 2 sprayers per parking lot that we use, which is Waterloo, the park at Higger Tavern Directly, Higger Tavern, and then the high school. So those are our 3 parking lots for overnight parking of buses. And so they'll give us a sprayer or 2 per location, and the chemical that we will use for that, for the disinfecting. And then,
so would that be the driver doing that, or someone else would be hired?
That's something that,
additional cost.
that's something that we may have to look at. It may be somebody at the school whenever they drop those kids off, that somebody there also jumps in and helps wipe that down, because that could take you a good 5 minutes to wipe a bus down, if not a little bit longer. So that may be something else that we have to look into as we get closer to how we can help facilitate that with our drivers.
Does Mr. Stevens already have a breakdown of pretty much the kids that rode last year to kind of have a feel of the kids as far as siblings and how many would?
He felt like most of our buses would have to do 2 routes. There are a few that would have to do 3 routes. Yeah, if we are bringing all kids in at one time, especially some of our city schools run 2 routes of 77 at capacity. And so that would have to put 3 routes to get all those kids back in if we're still social distancing on the, on those buses.
And there is longer driving time per bus driver, for the bus driver that would have to do that.
So that's kind of why Mr. Stevens and I have been talking about the extension of times. They're still printing, so they're coming.
Well, I mean, the ones that are leaving, I mean, the 3 triple routes, I mean, what time would those kids be leaving in the morning? What time would they be getting home?
which was another reason we wanted to, thought about adjusting the time of school start so that they wouldn't have to
Get on the bus.
get on the bus that much earlier.
Well, maybe we need an extra bus route, I mean, an extra bus for that route, the ones that are triple to not cause that, because that's, I mean, that's a strain not only on the kids, but on the parents as well.
And so one of the things too that we've looked at is opening the schools a little bit earlier, because currently they can't, the buses are not allowed to drop students off at schools until at least 7:15 or 7:10. So we'll probably open the school at 7 so that that bus can go ahead and start that next route a little bit earlier. And so whenever we're looking at the capacity, Mr. Stevens has already looked at most of those. He said some of the more rural routes are not quite as full as some of the in-town routes. And he said, so he may just be able to get by with 2 loops on that, or an elementary loop and then a middle high school loop, so that they're not as on those buses as long versus.
I know when we were in school, we ran what we call dual routes. And the elementary students were on one bus and the high school students were on a separate bus. And I don't know if that would work in this situation, especially with the staggering start times. If you were on a high school bus, you would have to leave twice. But we did that for a good several years when we were in school. And I'm sure of, because I was a bus driver.
I was too, but I guess it just depends on where you live, and mine got on there all together. Yeah.
I drove.
On my routes,
I drove.
I had a 3-hour route, I got home every one about 5:30.
In particular, our senior year, I drove a high school bus.
I did too,
uh,
3 years.
And elementary didn't ride.
Mine did,
One of the
mine did.
one of the recommendations out of the Accelerate Ed Task Force document that came from the state was to also request that if parents could provide transportation that have been riding buses, that we also say, if you can, while we're still in social distancing, provide transportation. I mean, if not, that's fine. But then that way it may free up a few more seats on the bus to get those routes down a little bit. So that's another thing that we may actually kind of encourage some of our parents that are able and can provide that transportation to schools.
And we polled our parents during the second survey of that option as well. So I have that information to share.
Yeah, it's a large number of them are willing to do that.
Yes.
So I have a question about discipline on the buses. You know, are we gonna ask bus drivers to try to stop and discipline if students aren't sitting where they're supposed to? Or is that something that will just be addressed later, or are we just not gonna worry about that? And, you know, 2 friends hop on the bus and know they're not from the same family, but they hop in the same seat together. Is that gonna be an issue, or is that just gonna let that go? Like, how will that be handled?
The bus drivers would definitely, I mean, they definitely deal with a lot of discipline on the bus. So we would, again, go through, typically what we do on a normal school day, we go through the expectations, even with the bus during school. So the teachers will review the matrix and the expectations of what is required and expected on buses. So we would have that time to review that with the students. And so we would expect them to follow whatever rules and guidelines are set in place, as we would the other kind of code of conduct.
But then what's gonna happen to them if they, especially you talking about young kids, kindergarten, first grade, that, you know, they see little Johnny next, in the seat next to them, they want to sit with him, they keep doing it, you know, what's gonna be the discipline for it?
Thinking of assigned seating, I know that has been used in previous times.
Yeah, but
Maybe just recently
I'm just saying if they don't follow that,
for the assigned seating for
yeah, I
little
mean,
Johnny.
they gonna have ISS, or, I mean, what's gonna be the discipline for
We
it?
would follow the same kind of code of conduct because assigned seating is already kind of a part of that,
Yeah.
following those procedures. So, we would just kind of walk through that, we would have conversations with the students, we would call home, just the same process that we normally would. And hopefully by having those expectations and reiterating what the expectations are for the students, that, hopefully we would get the majority of the students that would follow those guidelines.
Do we have bus assistance on regular bus routes versus special needs bus routes?
Not on all of our routes, we do not.
I mean, that could be one way of intervening.
And the assistant could be the responsible for wiping down.
So that's what I'm saying, that's a good way to utilize that.
We talked about that some, and so we're going to see kind of what the cost would be to do that. So, I do know that did come up during the conversations, so we're kind of working on to see what costs we would incur by adding assistants to the buses.
And kind of to address the discipline part of that too, we have added a couple of assistants to a few buses that were having consistent discipline issues that we were trying to address. So we did add a few of our already assistants, adding an hour morning and afternoon to ride those routes. And trying to utilize those same.
The people in there too, sometimes I know they work for a different entity when they're in the schools. That might be something to look out for, possibly that type of situation.
So,
Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to put on a driver. When a driver has to drive and pay attention to what all these kids are doing, that's a distraction. But I do think that we don't necessarily have to go out and hire a lot of people to solve the problem. Because we can always use responsible students.
You know,
And if you gave it a stipend, they understand it's not a pay. And most students probably would do that. I mean, they'll just have to monitor those kids. But that bus driver and distractions, that is the same problem. So, if we did a stipend per month, I don't care if it ain't $50, I'm sure we're gonna save rather than paying an adult. But to just remove students, all together, I think sometimes we sort of hurt ourselves. Do that, especially since we're dealing with the budget. Just a thought.
Any other thoughts or comments with thus?
This one back.
Okay.
Sorry, we took you to the end of your presentation.
That's okay. We'll save time at the end. So there's different actions that we've taken and steps that we've taken, and this has had a lot to do with following the guidelines from Accelerate Ed and from the State Department of Education. So through this process, we've been collaborating with DHEC, collaborating with the South Carolina Department of Education, as well as looking at the information from the task force from Accelerate Ed, the implementation of the Lawrence 55 task force, and a lot of that information and comments and ideas are things that we've discussed. There's information that you all have as far as their feedback. They also filled out a survey. Most of our meetings, all of our meetings have been through WebEx format, so sometimes it's difficult to share all of the information that we want to share. So they also filled out a survey, and that has the pink cover sheet to it, so you can see some of the comments and information. But their feedback has also been embedded throughout some of the information that I will share as well. Definitely lessons focused on social emotional learning and incorporating the WINGS curriculum, which we already had in place, but making sure that we provided some of that to students during this time of transition. Also, the implementation of our crisis response team for students and staff. We're currently working on that as well. We purchased computers so that all students in K through 12 will be one-to-one to address the digital divide. Teachers also created in the spring a 4-week distance learning plan, just in the event that if the start of school we have to utilize those plans. Also, the implementation of a virtual academy. So I have information that I would like to share with you all today about the possibility of having a Lawrence County virtual academy. We have things in place, if that is approved, to go ahead and implement that. So I have information to share about that as well. We have our distance learning resources on the website. We've purchased hotspots for those students who may not have internet service. That's also provided for those students. They can check them out from the district office to help with that as well. And also a survey to staff, parents, and students. And that information is also in your packet as well. Some of the comments from those survey results. So I pulled some of those. So this is the information. It says, are you willing to allow your child's temperature to be taken by the district before riding the bus and entering the building? So you can see the information there as far as 89.4% said yes and 10.6% said no.
And how many parents took the survey?
For the second survey, we probably had about maybe a little over 1,000 that took the second survey. And for, is the information in there?
I can pull it up.
Okay. So Ms. Wilson will look at the exact numbers for that. We did have more response with the first survey. Second survey was a little shorter time frame, but in that short period of time, we did have a good bit of parents to participate.
I saw that people were saying that you could take it multiple times, the survey.
Well,
So do we know if people took it multiple times? The second one especially. I saw people making the comment on Facebook that when they took the survey, that once they took it, then it gave them the option to take it again.
I did not, just from looking at the responses, I could not tell that, but it's something I can definitely look into.
Yeah, there were several people that made the comment and that they felt like then that the numbers may have gotten skewed because of that, because that they were allowed to take it again.
That's something that we can definitely look into and be mindful of.
We talked
Well, I
about
think
that
the idea
earlier, was because for parents who have more than one student, right?
Yes, I
Yes.
think that was the idea on why you could take
Yeah.
it more than once, and especially the first survey,
And that's-
Where it's
because
different.
we were having, like, for example, I was filling it out for 3 different students, and they all had 3 different experiences that, to get across, so, so I think that was the idea behind it, but, I don't know what people would have, I don't know why somebody would fill it out more than once, if they didn't have. Really?
Unless they were
Clearly, it's
trying to
probably
skew it,
trying
yeah.
to skew the information, but, I guess I would hope they would have better things to do at the time.
Excuse me, Dr. Tomley, 1,024 responses on the parent second survey.
Okay, thank you.
And how many on that first survey, because it was more in depth, I thought.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next question, if you have an elementary child, would you be in favor of him or her wearing a mask? And 41.1% said no, and 22.6% said yes to that question.
In elementary, K through 5?
Yes. And then the same question for a middle school student. And 24.1% said yes, they would be in favor of a middle school child wearing a mask. 29.9% said no, they would not be in favor.
Because it does not apply, I'm trying to figure out.
That is if they didn't have a
If they
middle
didn't
school
have a
child.
So are these numbers all from the second
Yes, ma'am.
survey?
And the same question for a high school child, we had 26.7% in favor of their high school child wearing a mask, and 26.3% said no, they would not be in favor of their child wearing a mask at the high school level. Looking at the next question, it was, if there's a worst case scenario where e-learning is extended for a semester. That was kind of a question, would you be in favor of e-learning? And 54.1% said yes, and 45.9% of the parents said no. And then with the recent increase in COVID-19 cases, do you feel comfortable sending your child to school for face-to-face instruction? And 53.6% said yes, and 46.4% said no.
So, I don't know, that seems tough. People don't want their kids to wear masks. I mean, it's bad for people who want their kids to wear masks. I mean, everybody wants their child protected. And I think that, in a lot of sense, is going to drive a lot of things. How many kids be on the bus and everything else, everybody don't want to be. So, I don't know. I mean, but we're just gonna say, can't say everybody got to wear masks. We can say it, but I mean, what are we gonna do? So, I mean, we're being presented with something that I think probably the young out of control, especially with there, because it's gonna be very controversial. And it's gonna be dangerous.
So what can you do? I mean, what would you, parents are making those decisions for their children?
Well, I mean, that's my point. I mean, because this morning, I'm listening to the news, and the president says that he's been petitioning all government to open all the schools. So, where do we go? I mean, we can't ignore it with rising numbers. That people staying home now because they're literally afraid.
Well, I know people quit their jobs,
Yeah.
anxiety. I mean, this got the best of some people, but I know personally, that's not good.
And I mean, if we open up schools, kids start coming to stuff, I mean, how loud are we in the school? Especially if you're together.
Someone shared with me that there has been a law passed that districts cannot be sued for if their child, if you send your child to school and they get sick, districts cannot be held liable for that. Do either of y'all know that's?
I know there were discussions about having something in place, but I don't know of anything that has happened.
Correct.
Like a waiver statement signed by parents?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it has to be considered people saying they're okay with their kids coming to school not wearing masks. I mean, that's going to be a whole other school,
Take us, and it's not the liability.
Well, DHEC recommends that children under 12 not wear.
No, I don't see how you can get an elementary student to wear a mask all day. You can't get them to sit in their seat, hardly get them to do their work. Yeah, I think that my biggest fear going into all this is that we will lose critical instruction and it will be diverted to focusing on adhering to guidelines. And Johnny, put your mask on for the 5th time today. And I would rather my child be hearing instruction than children being disciplined for, not wearing a mask or, oh, you're too close to that student, get away. Those things aren't going to lead to good they're not gonna lead to teachers having the opportunity to provide quality instruction. And based on these two numbers that you have here, I find it interesting that I would expect these numbers to have been this, like I would have expected, I don't know, but these numbers, it seems like clearly we need to offer two choices, and if you choose to send your child to school, then you send them to school, and if you want to do e-learning, then you do e-learning, and I know that's part of your presentation, but, so students have choice, parents have choice on what they want to do. I see the biggest concern would be, are the teachers ready? Are the teachers ready? Are they okay to be in the classroom?
I have a question for you, complete the survey.
Yeah.
What percentage of the total households, I think in the first survey was probably around 1,500, somewhere in that neighborhood answered. Second survey around 1,000. What percentage of the total households is that? A third, 20% that was actually responded to the survey?
I will say that we did not ask for any identifying information in the survey. So, in a sense, it's kind of hard to determine because, again, like I would have completed it for my 3 children. So, it's really hard to determine as far as the number of different households, just because we did not require the.
No, I'm not asking how many different, what I'm asking is, what is the total number of households that we have in our district? And then I can determine the percentage that are already would be somewhat less than the actual one that responded back. But we have approximately 4,500 households, 3,500.
Students enrolled?
The students
Our student enrollment,
like 3.
Right. I was wondering, what I'm trying to determine is this a small percentage of our total households, or is it more than 50%?
It's a
that
small,
actually
it's like
responded?
a third,
Not a third.
it's about a third, something like that.
So 2/3, approximately 2/3 didn't respond on their level.
And it could be less than a third, like if she's saying she did it 3 times, Kathy did it 3 times,
And
based
that's
on our children.
And that's my whole point here. This survey actually is going to represent a small section of the total households in the district. Even though this is the results of the survey, it doesn't represent the entire district. And for whatever reason, I don't know why they didn't respond, but
So you got some
that's their
grandparents
option.
who might be rearing their grandchildren, and some of them are of age, and some of them are just not computer literate. There are numerous reasons for them not doing it. Some people have to go to the library because of, you can get somebody else to do it, so you would be surprised at how that goes, so.
That's my whole point here.
Yeah.
we did have paper copies available.
Okay.
They were not mailed to every household.
And they weren't even emailed, they were never emailed. And, and I know you did a phone blast, and that probably got a few people in, but I feel like in general, the community wasn't really aware the surveys were out there. The first time I saw it was on Facebook. I didn't even know it was out there. And then the second survey, I saw that on Facebook. So, me as a parent, I didn't even get an email from the district. And I think that is that and the phone blast are the 2 most direct ways to get your information. And a phone blast didn't go out for the second survey. I just happened to see that on Facebook. So I do think that.
And it was a fast.
Yeah, it was a good turnaround. So,
On a holiday weekend.
So I'm concerned that the community hasn't really had the opportunity to voice their voice their thoughts.
And one other thing I'd like to say while we're on this, and I'm sure all of y'all are aware of this, but one of our charges as a board is to provide safe and adequate facilities. And for example, since I've come on the board, we put, and nothing to do with me, but over an 8-year period, we have put SROs in every school. But that is a main charge of this board to provide safe and adequate facilities. Now, what that's going to mean pertaining to the COVID, I'm not sure. But that is our responsibility.
Yeah, I'm saying we can't see. But I've talked to several people because this thing is different in certain communities. You know, they may not respond, that doesn't mean they don't know. You know, and in my opinion, it's no different than sending out a census. Some people just not gonna be able to attention. That doesn't mean they don't know. They know about the survey, they just not gonna respond to it. So in that case, what you're saying, Robert, is that becomes media. They don't wanna respond. They still don't.
Well, that's true. I'm just.
So.
But we have to base our decision on the data that comes in.
That's what I'm saying.
So if they don't respond, then it's just kind of like voting. And that's, if you don't go vote, then you can't complain.
Yeah,
It's just like vote.
but my point is, I think more people know about it than we think. I know it, you know,
And are just choosing not.
they're just choosing not to.
And that may be the
Because
case.
some really, you got a lot of parents, they really want their kids to go back to school and they had nothing to do with education. They just tired of them. But that's a fact. They just tired of them. You really want to get them out of there. So
Some parents just have no choice. They've got to go to work. And some employers are not being flexible enough to allow what we're doing as school districts. I mean, just because the school district's gonna decide, hey, we're gonna send half of you 2 days a week and half of you another 2 days, and then we're gonna go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever, parents don't get that option with an employer. They just don't get it. And I've heard from parents saying, I've got to work and I'm going to have to go 5 days a week to work. I can't not do it. And then you have daycares that you have to pay for 5 days, even if they don't go 5 days. You got to pay for the whole week. They don't give you that option either. So, what we're deciding about kids with going back to school has a whole trickle down effect that goes to the parents. And, you talk about them wanting to go back face to face. A lot of it has to do with just surviving. It's just a matter, and we already know we live in a community that a lot of people are just surviving day to day. And they have to go to work. They have to go to work. They don't have an option. They don't have anybody else to take care of the kids, to take them.
yeah, that's the hard part about educating. So,
Yeah.
Who you overwork? The teacher. Teachers have to got to deal with it. When they go home, they have nobody help them with homework. So they come back the next day unprepared. They don't read because nobody ever let them. But one additional stuff that we provide for to make that happen, our thing is to increase test scores. Make sure they work. But we can't be all over the place at one time. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we all know here, we got parents on both sides of the issue. Some say I'm not sending them back because of spike. And some say I gotta send them back because I don't have money to leave. And we're on both sides of the issue here. And that's why I just said what I said a minute ago. Our job is to provide a safe and adequate facility. And then the parents say,
That's those who come.
yeah, and that, well, yeah, for the best we can.
We have to
we had
look
that-
at where the spike is.
Well,
You have to look at where the spike is. And,
I was looking at Lawrence County as a whole, yeah.
right, and just the other night on the news, I saw it, that it was talking about Lawrence County. And, it was talking about they had 47 patients at Witt Center and like 63, 64 employees had it. Well, my goodness, that's 100 and something, people right there. I mean, there's the spike in Lawrence County.
And talking about the spike, from my understanding, talking to people, that in order for Lawrence County not to be considered a hotspot, we would have to get below 8 cases a day
10,
out of 6 to 10, out of 67,000 people,
100.
or whatever. It's a
Less
lot.
than 10
It's
out
a
of
lot of
100,000.
Our basis, but, so it's a small number for us to remain a hotspot. But regardless of what we think, we're dealing with parents that hear this information. And I've heard it both ways. And I that some will come back, some will not.
And the thing is, when you've got a number, like you say, there's like, I don't know, 1,400 people got it. Well, that's over the course of the whole time. That doesn't mean 1,400 people are walking around with it today in Lawrence County. That means ever since March, that it's been diagnosed or positive or whatever. And even the test, there's so much misinformation out there about it that, it's just crazy. Even DHEC and CDC, all of their information has been just all over the place.
I have questions that the Accelerate Ed used as they were meeting and making decisions and making the guidelines. So those are listed here. And we also used this as we met with the task force and as we met as far as planning as well. What measures are health experts recommending to minimize risk of infection? How is the disease known to spread? What are other school districts doing to adapt? What are the latest guidelines from federal, state, and local governments? And how do experts forecast the pandemic is going to progress? And just kind of using those questions to kind of inform those next steps and next decisions. So kind of going into now the different options. So for option one, there are different components. As we all know, the pandemic is pretty fluid, and so it's constantly changing. So I could definitely see how throughout the course, as we're looking at the 2020-2021 school year, that it's possible that the different components and options could be utilized throughout the school year at different moments, depending on what the data is and the recommendations that we are receiving. So with option one, component one would be the e-learning option. And this would be where teachers would report to work in their classrooms. They will teach lessons, which will be delivered via live stream, and they will also be recorded. Students will be able to interact with the teacher, ask questions, have discussions. Students will be able to watch the daily instruction live. And then if they're unable for whatever reason, maybe it's childcare or a work situation, they are able to watch the recorded lessons as well. Or even if it's for review, maybe they need to go back to review the content as well. So the students would have a regular daily schedule.
Let me ask a question on that. So would there be a way that if we went with this e-learning part, that to take attendance?
Yes, ma'am. There would be guidelines to where we would take attendance during when it's live, we would take attendance. And we're currently working with technology to figure out a way to see how many are watching the recorded version. So I think we have that kind of handout as well. We were working on that as well. But we would definitely take attendance. There would be guidelines as far as attendance is concerned.
But would we know for sure that it's the student and not somebody else watching it? And they're gonna, I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas.
Well, definitely during the live
The live, you would be able to
instruction,
see.
would be able to see it. And then there would be, assignments that hopefully the student, I guess we would not be able to 100% say that a parent isn't
Watching it.
but we would definitely have some guidelines and some accountability in place to help with those type situations.
Okay.
As far as e-learning, I think we all have witnessed, and I know Terry and I both have done the board meeting virtually. I did it maybe 2 or 3 times. I know you did it at least 1 time. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. What can we do as a district to improve our technology so, our students can truly engage and it not glitch every 30 seconds? I did see this, somebody put it out as a meme, but I burst into laughter because it is so true. I can watch something going on at the Space Center, and it's perfectly crystal clear 1,000,000 miles from Earth, and I can't hear what is going on in our board meeting, 5 miles down the road. What can we do as a district to improve our technology if we expect students to use e-learning? And especially if I was just kind of looking ahead,
learn
doing
from
the virtual
e-learning.
academy option that you're talking about. And I realize that's gonna cost money, but if we want this program to work, and if we want our students to be able to learn virtually, we have to improve our ability to do that. Because what I just personally witnessed with board sessions, it's absolutely terrible.
And we had a camera, you could see us, but was it clear?
I
Seeing
could
those,
see Robbie and Dr. Peters, but
Yeah.
I could only hear about every 5th word.
And you could hear everything behind,
Right, you could hear
picked up
paper
everything.
rustle, you
Oh,
could
yeah.
hear the AC comment, and
It
somebody
was-
bumped the table. It was terrible.
so if that's the case, it would be a joke for kids, more or less.
I mean, they can't engage
No,
because
you
they
can't
can't,
engage.
they're, it's glitching too much. And I think honestly, the one platform that my students had the best success with was Zoom, because it was so
Clear.
simple and it was clear and you could see everybody and hear everybody. But I understand that there's risks that are associated with that platform, and that's fine, I get that. But that was the simplest. Once we went to the WebEx or WebTech, and then the Google Meets, that's where I think if we're gonna move forward with something like this, we've got to do better for our students to be able to use the technology that we're providing for them. So, I agree.
So we'll definitely work on the things that we can do to enhance the technology component as well. Any other thoughts or questions concerning option 1, component 1, the e-learning?
Is it gonna be our expectation moving forward that the grades they earn are the grades that they earn? And there's not gonna be any adjustment period as there was, for the spring and nobody getting below their third non-leave grade?
Yes, those are recommendations that were sent from the State Department, and that's what we followed.
I understand that, I just want.
Right, and this time there's not any type of guidelines or anything that has been
Okay,
given to us from the state, so
okay.
they would, information items would be graded, and that would be there. So option 1, component 2 would be a hybrid face-to-face. And so this is where our students would be divided into 2 groups who would each attend school in person part of the week. Of course, the purpose of this is so that we're able to follow the guidelines of the social distancing, either on the school buses and of course as well in the classroom. So half of the students district-wide will attend on Monday and Tuesday, and then the other half on Thursday and Friday. And we will look at different options for Wednesday. Students with siblings, the siblings will be assigned to attend on the same days. So there are different ways that we're looking at doing that, either by last name, although we would make sure if siblings have a different last name, that they would still attend on that same day. We've looked at the option of even looking at the addresses as well. But the benefit of having that Wednesday in between would be used for deep cleaning, because on Thursday is when a different group of students would come in. So we would need the time and the opportunity to be able to provide that deep cleaning before the next group of students would attend. We would also focus on some interventions, some tutoring, some social emotional learning as well, where we may be able to provide some things for students on a more individualized basis as well during that time on Wednesdays. We've also looked at, there's some of our special education classes where the numbers are lower, that they may be able to attend 5 days a week. So we're looking at all of these options and looking at the scheduling and looking at the classroom options to see how we can make that, all of that possible. So the hybrid face-to-face would be a blend of the in-person learning as well as the online learning.
Do we have enough square footage throughout the district that we know for sure we could split them into 2 groups versus say 3? Or to observe social distancing?
Yes, sir. We have the measurements, the square footage of each of the classrooms. And so we use that information to determine how many students would be able to fit in the different classrooms and to meet those requirements.
How, if we look at this option and you're only sending half the students every other day, do we need a different bus route? I mean, do we need to run multiple buses, the same bus route?
In some cases we would, but we would have more definitive answers once we kind of determine exactly who those students are, which students would be virtual or e-learning students. But as in our initial look at it, we would still possibly have to run at least maybe 2 routes in a lot of cases.
The students that would just go like 2 days, like Monday and Tuesday, so would they do anything else the rest of the week?
Yes, ma'am. So they would have to do online learning, and there would be some recorded lessons as well, but there would be some online learning that would take place the days that they're not involved in the face-to-face instruction.
And how, so if we have a student they're there Tuesday, maybe there's some type of issue that takes place and they have to be disciplined. So that discipline wouldn't take place until the following Monday?
But it depends on the consequences. I mean, they would definitely address the discipline immediately that day. But I guess you mean like in regards to a suspension or?
So, yeah, or ISS,
I guess in those regards, we would probably have to be creative in how we would do that. but it will definitely be addressed and handled immediately whenever it takes place. But we would definitely have to look at how that will work.
I'll figure that out.
How do they receive their counseling services?
As far as like mental health, or
Just name their counseling. To see their counseling, I mean,
so a lot of that we are looking at incorporating on Wednesday, just because there will be so much that we will want to get in instructionally on the days that they are present face to face. However, our teachers will also be embedding different social emotional learning, character traits and things like that in their lessons. But we're looking at Wednesday also being that option for counselors to check in with students, for students to be able to meet with counselors. That may be by appointment to where you're setting an appointment. That could also be through phone calls or different methods as well. But Wednesday can also be used for the option for students meeting with counselors.
I guess what I'm saying, with you having great counselors, possibly more counselors having somewhere 450 students, how all will be seen? That's a large number for one person. We can't do all that on Wednesday. We certainly can't expect them to call on them.
We can also use the days,
Yes.
the days that they're not face to face. We could also utilize those days as well to help with that. If you're meaning at the high school level.
Right.
My nephew's counselor called him, and they get a face-to-face virtual.
I think those students that need the counselors will reach out to them. But I imagine a large portion of the students are really utilizing their counselors for, strategies on, okay, which class should I sign up for? And kind of once you get through that class sign up, I would say a large majority of the students probably don't go back to the counselors on a regular basis. Those that need to, though, I think you can check that group out, and then that will allow the counselor more time to focus on the students that truly need them for other support.
But I'm just saying the way that they're organized, certain people have 9th grade, certain people have, when it comes to seniors, they're definitely gonna have.
They will, yeah, absolutely.
So they're gonna have to see that counselor more, especially for those who plan to go to school, that type of stuff, scholarships, all that kind of stuff. Or coming in.
I think some of that could definitely take place virtually. And there may be times again that the counselor will set up appointments for the students to come in as well. So I think definitely working with the counselors to reach out and check in with different students. And also they may set a schedule with certain students that they know they need to see or speak to more frequently.
I mean, because doing this thing, and I'm just looking at how counselors operated, it was almost impossible for them to do their job from 8:30 to 3:30. But that many kids, I don't know, you don't know, you're not even gonna be able to go kids. But if you got 400 kids, I mean, I constantly talked to Miss Allen and Miss Hill, and they were saying they were up to 6 o'clock in the morning and still on the phone at 11 o'clock at night. That's a lot to require and think that that's gonna be the norm every day. That person ain't gonna keep it.
We can definitely meet with our school counselors as well to get some input on to some more suggestions they may even have of different ways, especially after kind of going through this process to, I'm sure they have even some different ideas that they may have that would enhance the experience from the board. So we'll definitely work on that.
Yeah, I think if you allow them as a team to come up with a solution, they probably already have it figured out, so, and just have to share it with anybody, so. On the hybrid / face-to-face option, so as we've been seeing parents, if you flip back to the chart that says, even with recent increases in cases, do you feel comfortable sending your child to school for face-to-face instruction? So 53% said yes, 46% said no. So instead of, why don't you take that 53% and, maybe the numbers don't quite work out this way, but I'm just using this chart because it's all I have. You take 53% of the students, let them have face-to-face instruction every day. If those students are willing to go back to school and those parents are willing to send them back to school, let them have a normal schedule. Those students that, parents are not comfortable and want to do e-learning, allow those students to log on to see the interaction in the classroom and the FaceTime as it's happening and record it. The same things that you mentioned over here, still do all these steps. But if you've got, Mrs. Beeks teaching social studies, and she's got 10 students in her classroom that she's teaching Monday through Friday, and she's got 15 that are watching her online. Because then the students that want to be at school are there, the students that need to be at home are at home. I mean, instead of raising the student body up, so that way you're letting the students that want to be there, and the students that can't be for whatever reason.
And it helps the parent as well.
What is going to really allow us to be able to make that call or decision is once we have a very accurate number of the students that really want to do our virtual academy. So those students that really, the parents are not planning to send them back, once we have a very accurate number. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward with that and be able to start the registration process for those students that are interested in the virtual option. And once we have those numbers, then we can see if numbers will allow us to allow the students to attend every day.
Well, I can see the virtual academy being more high school related, maybe middle school somewhat, but more high school related because high schoolers can drive or whatever, do that kind of stuff. They're more responsible to be left at home and parents go to work and stuff, but elementary kids, no, they're not. And like I said earlier, the parents have to work. And probably a lot of those comments where the answer was yes, send them back face to face, the parents are having to work. And they feel like, my kids need face to face interaction to learn. And I agree with what Kathy said, that if you've got that number, then that splits it up for you right there.
Right.
It makes it an easy split instead of trying to get so complicated with, okay, we're gonna send this group on Monday and Tuesday, and this on Thursday and Friday, and Wednesday we're gonna have a wipe down day or a planning day, and it just makes it a simpler, just cut and dry kind of thing that, okay, you wanna send your kid back, we're gonna send your kid back, and you won't have that many there that you can social distance. And then the other ones can e-learn.
I agree. If it would work out numbers wise, I definitely agree.
So,
But it could be all fifth graders, their parents are sending them back. So.
But then you would have the space still. You would have the space, you might just have to take up other classrooms.
That would be occupied by other teachers and students.
Well, but I mean, if you have a smaller number in other classrooms, that you could move them, but I mean, to make the space available for the social distancing or whatever you want to call it.
I think that would be great if the numbers work out to where it's really just half of our students that would be face to face, and we would be able to offer 5 days a week However, if the numbers do not work out that way, it's the reason why we were looking at possibly having the hybrid option as well. So again, as soon as we were able to kind of start that registration process to see how many parents definitively do not feel comfortable sending their children back to school and get them registered in an e-learning or virtual academy option, then we'll definitely be able to better plan.
So that's the thing for us, and I don't mean to keep rattling this, but the thing for us is that, you know, we've got to make a decision about what we're gonna do as a district, about whether or not we're sending kids back or not. And I don't know that we'll ever have a clear number of what parents are gonna do, whether they're gonna send them back now or send them back because on August the 17th, you know, this virus may not be anywhere close to what it is right now, or it may be totally different. I mean, won't have any idea what the numbers are gonna be. So they may decide, well, yeah, I'm gonna send them back. They may have told you, no, I'm not. And now they're gonna say, yes, I am gonna send them back. And yeah, we've got to come up with a plan. And then, you know, how long are we gonna, if we choose an option, how long are we gonna run this option?
I mean, that would be a decision that would have to be made.
Yeah, I mean,
We
it's
do
almost
see-
like if you say, okay, you gotta wear a mask. Well, if you go down that road, then it's like, well, when are you gonna take it off? You know,
We do
It's just-
receive our updates weekly now, so on Mondays, we receive the information of the current data from DCAT. So we're definitely able to continue to monitor the data and modify and adjust as needed.
Not related to mask, but just in general with, a plan. Clearly, this is fluid and ever-changing, so, I mean, I would think that we would go for one semester and then reevaluate. That would give us time to figure things out, and give parents time to figure out what they're comfortable with. You know, students maybe, and I really feel the need to separate K-8 from high school, because I think they're completely different animals as far as students, classes, how things are accomplished. So from a high school perspective, you got those students who are only signing up for semester courses anyway. So they can really start fresh with something new come January 18th or 19th. You know, but then Christmas gives a good break for the elementary students to shift gears if something needs to change. So I would hope that whatever we started with, we would only be locking in for that semester. And then the students would be allowed, if I chose e-learning for first semester, but hey, by November, look, I can't do e-learning anymore, or COVID's disappeared from the planet, I want to go back to school. So then we allow them to switch back to face-to-face learning for second semester. I mean, is that what you guys were thinking, or?
Well, definitely, especially when we're looking at the virtual academy, we would like to ask for a commitment of at least a semester from the parents and students. That will just kind of help with staffing and with just the logistics of everything. So we thought asking for a commitment of a semester would be a good option for those that choose the virtual. Again, as I stated earlier, I do, because you mentioned about things being fluid, I definitely see how there's a possibility that if we started out with e-learning, that, you know, hopefully at some point we would be able to go back to our traditional face-to-face normal schedule. So I can see us moving through the different components throughout the year, as stated earlier, based on what the pandemic and what the health officials are saying as well. So that's kind of why I'm looking at the different components. I can definitely see how they could all be a part of the plan, just based on the changes that could possibly occur throughout the course of a school year.
Tell me the difference between just the hybrid face-to-face model where you've got students doing e-learning there versus what would be happening from a virtual academy. Someone signed up for that.
Okay, so the virtual academy would be where there's not any face-to-face. So the hybrid is where they would come to school at least 2 days a week, and so they would have that face-to-face. The virtual academy are totally, those are different teachers. Those teachers are only teaching virtually. They're our teachers, but they're electing to teach virtually. And so that would just be just that virtual option. And again, we're asking for a commitment for at least a semester for those that would like to enroll in the virtual academy.
And that would be across all grade groups.
Yes,
So you feel like you would be able to pull teachers from the various grade groups in order to accommodate that, and you would be doing that from, say you were combining with 56, so, you know, maybe we provide the teacher that is teaching 3rd grade and they provide the teacher that's teaching 5th grade. How would that work in the high school setting where there's, I mean, there aren't grades, but there's so many class options?
we would definitely, we're requesting to possibly partner with Lawrence 56. They will also take this to their board for approval as well. So we'll know more after that process. So we thought working together that it could definitely help in those situations where they may have a teacher for specific content or subject, or we may be able to provide it as well. There's a little bit more flexibility, I believe, at the high school level just because of how their schedule is. So it could be possible that they may work with a class as well as with other options as well. But once again, once we kind of know how many we have in our virtual academy, then we will look at how we would staff that. I do know that we do have some teachers that are already requesting because of either health concerns or other family members, they're requesting to teach in the virtual academy versus coming back to a face-to-face setting.
So how, my question is, how do we get ahead? Are we gonna try to figure out who's coming back to school, or we're gonna wait your registration?
I would like to start registration next week for the virtual academy to be able to determine which students would like to sign up for that option. And in the event, once we have those numbers in, we would give them a couple of weeks to do that. And once we have that information, then we'll be able to move forward. So I would like to start that soon.
So is there anything stopping us from starting next week?
You all would have to allow me to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we need to get on it. I mean, parents want to know what we're gonna do, you know. And that's my thing about the workshop. I don't think we should leave here not knowing what we're gonna do. Because we're getting closer and closer. I mean, schedule a workshop. Probably be 2 or 3 weeks. And, you know, that's
Do we know the cost of the virtual academy?
How would it be split? That's what I was thinking about.
It would depend on the number of students. So again, it would depend on the number of students that we have and the number of students that 56 buy. If we are able to do it together, there would be a significant cost savings. So we're working on definitely, we have a lot of it in place. So it will not be as big of an expense for us because we do have a lot of the different components in place to move in that direction.
And by that you mean technology-wise or?
Technology, the program, actually, courseware is part of that program, although we would utilize it differently with having the teachers doing the live instruction. But courseware is something that we already have, and so that will be a component. So a lot of the Admentum resources and curriculum we already have. But we would have our teachers actually teaching live instruction.
So would our teacher be able to see the students as well as the students see the teacher?
Yes, ma'am.
That's one of my biggest concerns, because I think a lot of times communication between the teacher and the students is not taking place or responding back in a timely fashion when they are doing work to submit and get a response back. That's kind of one of the complications I've heard teachers realize.
So for teachers that, I know you kind of initially said that they would only be teaching the virtual classes, but, or at least that would be the goal, that you may have to, from a high school's perspective, use teachers that are teaching a face-to-face class and a virtual class. For those that would only sign up to teach the virtual class, would they come into the school building? Would they work from home? How would that be set up?
I think we would definitely look at that on a case-by-case basis. There are some, I think, that may have some hesitations about coming into the school building. So we would definitely work with them on an individualized basis to where they could possibly, if they have everything they need to work from home, we would make sure that's provided. But then there are other cases where we would have the teachers come in so that they'll have all the resources and all their classroom materials, and we can live stream, and we'll have technical support also available that can get to the classroom a little easier versus than if they're at home. So definitely, there's an option there. We look at case by case, and it's possible that they would all be willing to come into a classroom.
So the way I understand what you just said with the virtual academy, I need to get a camera as soon as possible.
Yes, sir.
And in the virtual academy, will students still, and I don't even know, I mean, we haven't even gotten this far yet, but clubs and activities and things like that, as those are allowed, or when they are allowed, would the virtual students be able to participate? Would they be able to do sports, and, if they're choosing virtual, we don't know why they're choosing virtual, so maybe they're not even going to want to do any of those things, but in the event that they want to, can they? And then the other question is, will they be able to get, maybe an elementary student get breakfast and lunch, and a high school student get lunch? Will they be able to get those meals still?
They will definitely be able to participate whenever clubs and all those things are offered. They will be able to participate. They would still be assigned basically to their home school.
Okay.
So if it's an E.D. Morse student, they would still be assigned to E.D. Morse. There's not a different beds code for the virtual academy.
Okay.
So very similar to how we do our alternative school. They are still assigned to their home school. So they would definitely still be able to participate in anything as well. And we would definitely work with food services on how we might still be able to provide some meals for those students.
Have we had any requests for homeschool?
We had some requests, but it is my hope that with this option, that those homeschool students will join us back to be part of our virtual academy.
Because I know some parents have said that, and to me, again, I didn't know if we had any requests. Because I know homeschoolers have that right option too, to bring their kids to be tested as well as sports and things like that, so just kind of wonder about that.
Okay, so our traditional face-to-face is what we're all longing for to be able to do again. But again, safety of our children, I feel, is priority. And so this would be an option once the health conditions say that it is safe to do so. But this would just be our traditional face-to-face regular schedule option. So our option 1, component 3 would be traditional. So hopefully at some point during the 2020-2021 school year, we would be able to get back to our traditional model.
I have a question, the exposure. How will that be handled? Say a child rides a bus, has been exposed, and then goes into a class. I'm not an expert, but I've had 3 children exposed, and what happened to them? They were all quarantined for 2 weeks. If a child goes into a classroom or rides the bus, we'll start with the trip to school. It's been exposed. Will that complete bus be quarantined for 2 weeks, including the driver? And then the child goes into the school through, the people there definitely are in the class, and I don't know about how you handle hall situations, close, but people that are in their classes during the day, and the teachers also, which will be multiple teachers, even if children don't change classrooms, they stay in one classroom, the teachers will rotate. Because we're gonna have exposure. Like I said, I got 4 children, 3 of them been exposed. It's gonna happen. Do we have the resources to replace the teachers and bus drivers that would be exposed and have to be quarantined? And with these students that are exposed, would they just automatically go to the e-learning, or would they automatically go into the virtual learning school for that 2-week period? Or would that classroom, the whole classroom, make switch to an e-learning type thing for 2 weeks and still have the same teacher?
My thought would be that the entire class for that period of time, if we're talking about the exposure for the entire classroom, that they would have to move to an e-learning model for that classroom with that teacher. We are awaiting kind of more definitive guidelines to come out as to how we handle that when there's exposure. Because on a bus, there will be students that will go to multiple classrooms. So we would have to look at how we would handle that in the different classrooms as well. So that is something that we are looking into and working on to find out exactly how we have to handle those situations.
And the reason I brought up goes back to the point Terry was making earlier, parents having to work. They might come to school one day and they find out little Johnny been exposed. So everybody little Johnny been in contact with, which very easily could be 100 people during the course of the day. Their parents the very next day had to find somebody to take care of their children on less than 24-hour notice. And the point is, going back to what Terry said, these parents have to have an opportunity to make plans. A 24-hour notice is, and then if you got multiple children, your child, say, like Terry got 3, one's exposed, does that, and he goes home, does that mean the other 2 can't come to school?
I think we're just, like you said you're waiting on some additional instruction on that or some additional guidelines. The truth of the matter is, we don't know that one of us sitting right here in this room wasn't exposed yesterday when you stopped at the gas station. There's no way to truly control it and end it. It's not possible unless we all quarantine to our homes and never leave again. You just can't do that. So, for my kids, I mean, yeah, they're going to be going 3 different directions when they get to the high school. They're going to be interacting with multiple teachers, students, being in the hallways, touching doorknobs. Unless we were to see kind of all of a sudden a spike in cases with high school students, I wouldn't see that there would be a need to just automatically quarantine everyone. Because there's just no way to know. There's no way to know.
Yeah, I'm only talking about it, no exposure is all I'm talking about. But I agree with what you said, that every one of us could have it, just on the gas. And I agree with that. But we will have known exposures. And then my next question into that, and I don't know the answer, I'm just asking the question. Does DHEC does their guidelines overrule us? In other words, just like, and I assume they do, because of the way they just shut down summer schools and all athletic programs.
Well, they just make a recommendation recommendation, and then the state wouldn't fund us
Right.
for
And that's my
summer
question.
school. They didn't override us, they wouldn't fund us unless it was face to face, so.
So they do not, we do not have to go by DGAC rules.
I mean, it's not a law.
Right.
There's no law that says we've got to do, they're
That's
just
what I'm
putting out
asking.
recommendations.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Does DGAC overrule us? And the answer, in your opinion, no.
Well, in the conversations, when they talked with us, they said, it's strongly recommended by either the DHEC or the State Department. And you have the flexibility to make your own decision, but please know that you're going against the recommendations that have been provided to you. So that is kind of how it has been framed in our communications.
As, speaking of exposure and going back to the hybrid face-to-face model. So if a student is there on Tuesday and they're with, teacher A, and then teacher A's been exposed and they have no idea, and then students come in on Thursday. So now Tuesday students have been exposed to teacher A, and Thursday students have been exposed to teacher A. Do we feel like this is really, this separation, are we really going to be able to capture and limit exposure with this students, with the teachers being the constant the entire week and all of the students crossing paths? How are we going to really be able to limit, they ought to be in the classroom together versus one on Tuesday and one on Thursday. And the end result would have been the same, that the teacher had been exposed and now exposed to the class.
We just would not be able to adhere to the recommended guidelines for social distancing if they're all in there at the same time. So that would really be, I guess, the difference.
So it's not really about the teacher and the interaction, it's just about keeping people 6 feet apart.
That is a major consideration, yes. So we've talked about the virtual academy option kind of throughout the morning, but again, this option would be available for parents who do not feel comfortable with their child returning to school, or students with underlying health issues. Those students who may have parents or caregivers who have underlying health issues as well. Students will be assigned to their home school, as mentioned earlier. Virtual instruction will be given each day. Students will have a regular daily schedule to follow with their teacher. Our plan is to utilize our existing staff. And there's an option to have a partnership between Lawrence 55 and Lawrence 56, pending the approval from both school boards.
Will 56 and 55, will the teachers be getting any type of stipend to teach virtual school? Will they just be making their same pay?
At this
What's the
point,
expectation?
they would be making their same pay. We will provide professional development and training to help those teachers be able to effectively provide virtual instruction. So at this time, they will be making their same rate pay.
would we receive funding for the students attending virtual school just like we do?
Yes, ma'am, we will. And even if we're able to recapture any students that may have gone to homeschool or private school, we would receive funding for those students as well.
And what Terry just mentioned there is something to consider for some of these students that will want to go virtual school. If we don't offer it, their virtual school is out there available. And if we lost 200 students district-wide, we would lose funding for those students also.
Any thoughts, discussion, or questions regarding those different learning models?
the face-to-face hybrid, the component two here. So I know my high schoolers in some instances had textbooks in their classroom, and they just really had a set of textbooks for that classroom. If we have students that are there 2 days, then working from home 2 days, how will the teacher just have to accommodate and not use textbook work? Will they have to load things on the Edmentum? How will that work?
I think for multiple reasons, even when we're thinking about contact and those things, each child would have their own textbook that they would use. So we're looking at options, even when we're looking at the weekdays, of having that as an opportunity for students to get their devices, their textbooks, all their materials, and kind of get an orientation type setting as well. So the students would have a textbook.
Okay. And would you expect subs and for virtual learning, substitute teachers? How, we wouldn't want the kids to miss, and certainly substitute teachers don't provide quality instruction for the most part anyway. So would those students maybe be able to have one of the other virtual teachers log on within that day? Has there been some discussion about that?
We have discussed that option to where they would be able to pair up with another teacher to be able to just join that class instruction.
Okay.
We are also, we've had discussions about creating a database to where the teachers have recorded some lessons, which I know is not necessarily the same, but at least it is that teacher recording some live lessons, providing them instruction in the event that we couldn't do the combined classes. So those things that we discussed. This is just information, just to kind of reiterate that they would have regular daily schedules. And these are the requirements that were issued out for the spring. We do not have any additional recommendations for the fall yet, so this is just information that was utilized and went out from the spring. Again, live and recorded virtual lessons daily. Work should be posted weekly, feedback should be given weekly on a regular basis, and weekly due dates will be given as well that are reasonable as well. This is the information. We do receive this report each week from DHEC, and I believe you all received a copy of it as well, the metrics and the different categories. And so it's divided into low, medium, and high. And you can see the different categories where there's looking at the 2-week incidence rate, the trend in incidence rate, and then the 2-week % positive rate. And from looking at the data and looking at the map, you can see for Lawrence County that we rated high in all of the 3 areas. So the recommendation was for us to not have any face-to-face sessions or any face-to-face instruction during this time, as long as we're characterized in the high category. So that was the recommendation that was provided by DHEC and the State Department.
Do you want to, does anybody need a larger copy of that? I have this printed.
Oh, no, I'm good. I answered it. Can we, Dr. Hollis, do you mind if I go back and ask a question on the distance learning contingency?
Sure.
So would the expectation be for the hybrid, the e-learning, and the virtual academy that the class time instruction on the screen would be equivalent to in-classroom instruction?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There may have to be some modifications when we're looking at maybe our younger children. It may be broken into increments or something to help with that engagement and time spent. But yes, the classes would be expected to be at the scheduled time each day.
Okay.
I would think for younger kids, probably like 20 minutes or so. Attention span, yeah, a little less. That's just me.
So I also provided, I know this is really small, but this was just kind of for the state, the different counties, and where they, how they rated in each of the different categories. And I think, did you have a copy of this one?
Yeah.
So we have a copy if you would like.
Yeah, I would like
a copy of that.
Thank you.
The back page is
Much better for the eye.
So kind of a segue into, thank you, is Mr. Benfield served on our task force committee. Because of the high volume of workload, he was not able to attend on Justin Benfield, the chief executive officer at Prisma Health. But however, he did provide me with this report. And so I'll just kind of read the information that he provided. He said Lawrence County is clearly experiencing the surge as others in the state and across the country. Our fears of being able to accommodate the surge have come to fruition. The outbreak at Wynn Center has compounded the surge. Every staff bed within the hospital is occupied, and we're having to hold patients in the emergency department until we can transfer or get our beds turned over. They're working with Lawrence County and the city of Clinton emergency management teams to put their alternate care site tent back up. And this was yesterday. They were working on that, weather permitting, to allow for additional beds. They've also implemented phase 1 of their surge plan to bring in 10 additional beds. Drive-through testing hours have been expanded from 8 to 2 at Lawrence County Hospital. At this point, a doctor's order is still needed and can be obtained through either an office visit or online virtual portal. So education to the community on social distancing, mask utilization, and standard precautions such as hand hygiene, covering sneezes, coughs, cleaning surfaces is paramount at this point. It's not about fear of the virus, which was emphasized. It's about fear for those that do become infected and need hospital care. The resources are limited. The average age of those infected by COVID-19 have decreased by 10 years. The elderly and those with compromised immune systems are still the highest risk category when it comes to the severity. However, they are seeing more negative outcomes in younger populations. So they're thinking that we will have to deal with this for weeks to come and possibly even months. So this was just a report from Mr. Benfield from Prisma Health.
Okay, so he's giving us an overall thing of COVID-19 for the county. And our task is dealing with the students. Are they telling us how many students this is affecting? Because to me, it's a different, this is a totally different fight. We're talking about bringing these kids to school. I mean, that's level in a high among those. And how we see it.
I don't think there's a differentiation in the report.
Yeah, I know, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm asking about school age. Because when you're talking about total numbers, you're still talking about the other people. But being said, and young people.
It's very small,
Huh?
very small number.
Well, that's my point. So if it's small, we should be able to move forward with some degree of comfort.
Do they offer any data based on age group? I know when they talk about this, they'll comment that it was an elderly person, but as far as the numbers themselves of positives, does DHEC provide age breakouts at all?
We are not provided that report, but that's something we can inquire about to see if that's something that they would have available. Just basically from the report that I was reading, they're just saying that that they are seeing an increase in the younger population, but no specific ages were given.
But a young person can transmit it to an elderly person at home, once they go home.
We do that.
And that's why it's so important, because we're not just talking about infecting students here. We're talking about the possibility of infecting everybody in their household. And what Anthony said is a fact. Young folks don't suffer the physical, as of now, do not suffer the same physical, hardships that an older person, suffers. But as Susan pointed out a while ago, we have a lot of students that are raised by grandparents and even great-grandparents, as Susan's aware of. So we have to keep their safety in mind too, because if they get sick going to the hospital, where are those kids gonna go?
At some point, there becomes, we have to rely on personal responsibility. And if someone is in that state and cannot afford for sickness to come back into their home, then maybe they should sign up for the virtual academy.
Right.
You know, I mean, we have to provide a couple of options, and then people need to, people, community need to make that choice.
Yeah, we
Parents
can't
need to
just
make that
stop.
choice.
And that's
Stop the
actually,
world.
that's actually what my point is here. That, the virtual academy and e-learning, that this, you know, is going to become probably for the foreseeable future, a permanent part of our school system.
So based on the current data, we know the recommendation would be, just based on where we are currently, to not have any face-to-face. That would be the recommendation. So any discussions around possibly starting out with e-learning and then having hybrid to begin after Labor Day. However, it would be pending what the data is saying at that point. And then we discuss kind of the hybrid option. Any thoughts or comments in regards to that?
So I have just a couple like, just kind of backup questions here. I know you mentioned the task force a couple of times. How often does the task force have the opportunity to meet?
We've had 3 or 4 meetings. I think we have 3 meetings, and we will continue to meet to get their feedback on logistics and things of that nature. And they have also had the opportunity to provide feedback through emails and the survey as well.
Okay. And will our surveys that you have here in front of us, will those be made available to the public?
We can definitely do that.
I'm just asking, someone asked me for the survey and I didn't even have it, so I was just asking.
Yes, I do know as far as our first parent survey, we submitted that information in a press release. And so we can definitely do the same thing with
Okay. And going back to the calendar and talking about the leap days, the 6th graders and the 9th graders, to me, would be the most impacted by not being able to have some face-to-face time with their teachers prior to doing e-learning, prior to a hybrid model, trying to do e-learning through Labor Day, whatever that ends up looking like. I think 6th graders and 9th graders are the most critical group to get in front of the teachers for a bit. So for those leap days, could every 6th grader and every 9th grader go through their new schedule at their new school?
Yes, that actually came up in some capacity with the task force. And that was a recommendation to be able to allow those students to be able to come in. Of course, it would not be the whole group at the same time, but we might definitely do a deviation of that to allow them to come in. And we talk about kind of an orientation type of setting, to go through the expectations, the requirements, to get their devices, to talk about any questions of what will the e-learning, if that's an option, how that will look. So yes, we discussed having those students attend during that time.
And I would, personally, I would think it would need to be more than one visit, but, you know, ever how that worked out with numbers, but, I just think it'd be very important for those two groups.
So are we gonna require teachers to come in for those specific purposes?
The teachers will be there anyway.
The teachers, K through 8, we have funding for the teachers to come in during that time. So the teachers for K-8 will be there during that time. And we're looking at district funding for our 9th grade teachers, or for some teachers at the high school to be able to come
I
in.
guess what I'm asking, if the teacher doesn't feel comfortable in the situation, are we requiring them to do that?
If the teachers if they don't feel comfortable with face-to-face instruction, some of those are asking to be a part of the virtual academy. So in that instance, they would not be there during any type of face-to-face orientation time.
And was there a discussion, has there been discussion about the report that came out from the American Association of Pediatrics and the social and emotional well-being of the kids, and how important it is for them to be in school? What was that? I mean, did you guys discuss that? And
We did discuss that, and we definitely agree that, you know, it's definitely best for students to have that opportunity for face-to-face, providing we can do it safely.
I mean, I believe their report even stated that the social and emotional well-being of the student was more important and outweighed the risk of COVID. And I just mentioned that because I just wanted to make sure that it was something that was covered. But I still get back to what I said to Robbie earlier. I think it's a personal choice for parents, and as long as we provide them choices, then they can do virtual or face-to-face in whatever manner it turns out to be. Okay.
When we look at the student survey here, it says that 63.4% of the students were not concerned about returning to face-to-face instruction.
You don't either.
I know, but I mean, that tells you that, I mean, if you look under the student survey results, I mean, they were asked, are you concerned? I mean, 981 students responded and said, are you concerned about returning for face-to-face instruction? And 63.4% said no.
I mean, even with that, we're still responsible.
I understand that. I mean, yeah.
I'm not questioning that. But our question from Dr. Thomas and what we're asking her, she said she wanted to hear what we know about virtual learning and hybrid learning later.
Yeah, I'm not real crazy about the hybrid option, just because of, you know, I think that the virtual academy is a good idea. And I think once we, you know, figure out the days, but I think it would be better to go with the virtual e-learning and the traditional for those that want to go back, just like the ones that said, send my back. I mean, because if we break all that up, split all that up, then I don't think you'll have that many students that would actually be in there face to face. I think busting them up throughout the week is putting more of a strain on the parents.
I'm definitely eager to be able to get that information so that we can plan for it.
Yeah, I just don't, you know, that the hybrid one is just too complicated to try and make it work to me. That's my opinion.
So I guess maybe one thing we would need to consider as well is in the event that the numbers would not allow us to follow the guidelines, would the hybrid be an option that we would consider?
Definitely. I can see that one as, I can see what you're saying, but I also see it as an option. Of course, I prefer face-to-face,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
under the circumstances, yeah, but under the
But if you have
circumstances.
if we find out we have the numbers for virtual, then you have virtual, then you could have some e-learning, then you could have them face-to-face. I mean, you could have 3 options that you offer. The e-learning could coincide with the face-to-face. Right?
If they are choosing just kind of an e-learning option, that would really be our virtual academy. Really, when we're looking at
So that's gonna
e-learning,
be, that would be
So
kind of.
the e-learning would
Together.
coincide with virtual.
would coincide with hybrid or with traditional. So the e-learning could be a component, kind of like where we were traditional face-to-face, and then we got the orders that we had to close, so we switched to e-learning.
Right.
So that would be in the instance where we would use our e-learning.
E-learning is, so if they go Monday and Tuesday, then they would do e-learning the other 3 days of the week. But if they sign up for the virtual school, it would be completely different classes, different teachers.
Right.
So.
But
we're
if
trying to
we
use
get,
e-learning and virtual.
if we gave the option, like, if they didn't want to come in to face-to-face and they didn't, if they couldn't do virtual for whatever reason, I don't know. Are we just gonna give those 2 options, virtual or face-to-face? I mean, would that be the same? Is virtual and e-learning the same? No?
The difference would be with the virtual is there's a commitment of a semester. E-learning is something that we may have to move in and out based on the pandemic or the conditions, or part of the hybrid model. So virtual would just be, this is my schooling option for the semester. I'm completely part of the virtual academy. Versus e-learning may be that we just do this for the first month, and then we move into a hybrid or traditional schedule. Or if things change in October, we may have to switch to an e-learning option.
So if they, I think probably since we've got a low number of parents that replied, I mean, even though we got a survey that maybe we need to ask them, we're gonna try and find out a number for the virtual academy to say, do you want virtual academy? Do you want to come back 5 days? Or do you want e-learning?
The 5 days are required by the state. So we would have to offer those 5 days to students. How we would bring them in, we have some flexibility with that, but the 5 additional days are a requirement or a mandate by the state.
Right, but I'm saying to give the parents the option, because when we go to that hybrid where we're breaking the week up, then it causes the parent the problem. Whenever we structure it to where, you know, we say, are you gonna do e-learning? Then they've got to make a plan of, okay, well, I've got to find somewhere for my child to go during the day, to daycare or whatever, because you know, if they're going for 2 days, they're gonna have to pay for a whole week regardless.
I think you all would have to make a decision on whether or not you feel that the circumstances are safe for students to be able to come back to a 5-day-a-week regular schedule. So I think that's a decision that, that would be the question. Do we feel
We don't
like
know.
things are safe?
We're not gonna know what it's gonna be like on August 17th, 24th.
Yeah.
We don't know.
We don't.
And we do get.
I realize we can't wait, but that's what I'm saying. We've got to think, you know, we've got to think about,
So that was kind of why I had the question, was based on the current data. We do get updates weekly where we can modify and adjust, but based on the current data, where do we see, as far as our plan moving forward? We do have to notify parents 20 days prior to the start of school of our plan. So that would be something that we would need to take into consideration, is that is a requirement that 20 days prior to school starting, we would have to notify parents of our reentry plan for schools.
so if we did a phone blast and said, we need for you to, I mean, is there a way that they could do like, press 1 for this option, press 2, press 3 on a phone blast? Can they vote that way?
I don't think
I
our
don't
system
think it
does
has
that.
that capability. It's more of a,
You sure would know who responded to that.
other than.
How would you know who responded?
You don't know who's responding
That's
to
what,
the
that's what I
surveys.
was, you brought that down up earlier.
Yeah.
But.
But we're
it's
just trying to
hard.
get a number to just say, if, you know, if you said, are you in favor of this hybrid? You know, because we don't know. We don't know if we got parents out there that would be in favor of it. I hate for us to sit here and say, well, we're gonna go with this hybrid. And then we got parents saying, I can't do that.
Yeah, and I feel that same way. I think that yes, we are the board, and we are to be making this decision. However, we're making it on behalf of our community. And I don't feel comfortable saying, yeah, this looks good. I'm in the trenches as a parent with my daughters, but I'm not in the trenches as a teacher, as someone who has to go to work every day, that has to find daycare. There's other areas that, I'm not currently in those trenches, so I don't feel like I can speak on behalf of all those individuals. And for us to just say, okay, let's vote and make a decision, this is what we're doing, and then just have a surge from the community, like, wait a minute, why didn't, you know, talk to us more? And I know that we sent out these surveys, but I just don't think I think the survey needs to be, here's our choices.
Which
This
ones
is what we
fit
narrowed
you?
it down to, and this is what it looks like.
Yeah,
You know,
which one do you like best?
what's your best option? What accommodates your family the best? And I want to jump back a second to get, for the student survey. If you know, we know that there was all grade levels, doing this survey, and if you read some of the comments, you can tell that the parent wrote the comment. But if you read these comments, the majority of them have to do with social and emotional health of the kids.
Yeah.
They're not concerned about learning Spanish. They're concerned, you know, these kids are saying, I need football. Is band going to start back? I want things to be normal again. I want school to be normal again. One of them said, you know, I need robotics. I need football and basketball and track, please. You know, being home creates anxiety. And I lost it here for a second, but one of the kids was like, I say he, I'm sorry, I don't know who it is, he or she, but made the comment, you know, I can't stay home anymore. You know, those kids are responding on a social and emotional level, which is where they are in life, and I get that, and I know we have to help guide those choices that the kids are wanting to make, but I just wanted to share that if you read through the comments, they are all geared toward not all, most of them are geared toward social and emotional needs, which, you know, which is something that I
That's
think
part of
is
learning
a
too.
top priority, absolutely. I mean, we have 2 students a year ago commit suicide at the high school, both of them in Candy's classroom. So it matters, it matters.
It matters, but we can send the same survey out. If we send it out the way we did, probably the same people will respond.
I know, we have.
Well, it's gotta be done
different.
Huh?
It's gotta be done different because
But my point is probably the same people are gonna respond. Some people just not gonna respond. And I'm saying, so we'll never capture the true intention of what people want.
well, we
So-
just have to say, this
so
is your
by us-
opportunity.
I understand that, but by us trying to figure out what parents want, we can't do it. We just have to make the best available option we have and go forward, because we're not gonna satisfy everybody. I guarantee you.
We're not gonna satisfy everybody, but it's our job to know what our parents want.
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, yeah,
Do we wanna go eat and continue
Yeah, that,
talking about that?
and we can pick
Since we
this
gotta do that.
conversation right back up. And we will, what we'll need to do is adjourn from the meeting, workshop. We will re-adjourn, reconvene or start over, I guess is the right word, at 12:30. And, but I want to say this again now. What this agenda does is gives us the opportunity to vote on any part of this or none of it. As we see fit, as we go through it. You know, the first thing on, that here would be board action on the revised schedule. But it just gives us the opportunity to go ahead and set things in motion, like virtual school, for example. We won't find out how many. But we will be picking this conversation right back up. But in this second portion, y'all will have the opportunity to make motions and vote on any portion of this. To have a motion that we adjourn.
So maybe.
So, all in favor, aye? See you back in 30 minutes.
Was that Terry and Anthony?
Yes.
So, okay.
I make a motion, I don't know who did.
Maybe Anthony,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Lisa will just leave it for a minute, so.
Oh, made the motion, or second.
Did you second?
Susan said.
Oh, Susan seconded. I don't know.
You said, Carrie.
I think we said it at the same time.